You've been trying, like actually trying, and somehow nothing has moved. Not because you're doing something wrong, it's just been one of those stretches where everything feels like it's running in place. And honestly, that's been going on for a couple of months now. Here's what's been happening. Since February, Saturn and Neptune have both been in Aries, and together they create this weird fog where effort just doesn't seem to go anywhere. You do the thing, and then nothing really changes. But this morning, something shifted. Venus and Jupiter lined up, and I don't mean that in a vague way. Venus is in Taurus right now, which is literally her home. Jupiter is in Cancer, which is his strongest placement, both of them at full power at the same time. That's actually rare. What that means in practical terms, money that's been stuck starts moving. Situations that felt frozen start to loosen. Not because of luck exactly, just because the conditions finally changed. The window is open until April 18th. After that, it closes. Let's talk about what that stretch actually felt like, because I don't think it was dramatic. That's the thing. It's never dramatic. It's just this low-level friction that follows everything you do. You put in the work, you make the calls, you show up, and then you wait, and nothing really lands. Not in a catastrophic way, just in that quiet, grinding way where you start wondering if you're missing something obvious. Some step everyone else knows about that you somehow skipped. And the worst part is you can't even point to something that went wrong. Nothing broke. Nobody let you down in some obvious way. It's just that the results kept not arriving. Weeks of that. Then another few weeks. And at some point, you start carrying this low background doubt about whether any of it is actually going to go anywhere. That's not a personal failure. That's not you losing your edge or missing your window or any of that. That's what it feels like when the conditions underneath your efforts are working against you. Quietly, invisibly, but consistently. There's a real difference between doing the wrong things and doing the right things in the wrong conditions. Most people never make that distinction. They just absorb the results, or the lack of them, as information about themselves, as evidence that something's off with them specifically, and they carry that into the next attempt, and the one after that. If that's been you the last couple of months, if somewhere in there you started questioning yourself in a way you didn't used to, that's worth separating from the actual situation. Because what's been creating this isn't something you did or didn't do. It's a specific configuration that's been running since early this year. And it has a name, a mechanism, and, as of this morning, a change in conditions that directly affects it. That change is what this is about. Not eventually, not in theory. Something actually moved this morning, before most people were even awake. And what it opens is real and specific and has a closing date that's only a few days out. So let's start with what actually created all that friction. Because once you understand the mechanism, this morning's shift makes a lot more sense. So here's what's actually been going on since February. And I want to be specific, because the specifics are what make this make sense. Two things have been running at the same time. Not one, two. And that's part of why it's been so hard to shake. You weren't dealing with a single obstacle. You were dealing with two separate mechanisms stacking on top of each other. The first one is Saturn and Neptune together in Aries. Here's how to think about that. Saturn is the planet of structure. It's what pushes you to build things, take action, get results. It's the part of the sky that says, do the work, put in the time, make it real. Neptune is the opposite. Neptune dissolves things. It makes edges soft. It takes a clear picture and turns it into a blur. So when those two are sitting in the same sign at the same time, you get this strange combination. The drive to act is there, but the results keep coming out foggy. You do the thing and then look for what happened, and it's just unclear, not gone, not ruined, just not landing anywhere solid. That's been the underlying texture of the last couple of months. Real effort, real intention, real follow-through. And then nothing crisp at the other end. Just more waiting. The second layer is separate. And honestly, It's the one that made this week specifically feel heavier than the weeks before it. Mars connected with Neptune exactly this morning. Mars is action. It's the part of you that moves, pushes, initiates. And when Mars lines up directly with Neptune, that same fogging effect hits the action itself. Not just the results. The effort going out the door also runs straight into the blur. So right at the moment when you'd normally feel the push to make something happen, that push met a wall of, but where exactly am I going with this? That's what this morning felt like for a lot of people before they had any reason to know why. And here's the thing about that, and this is the part most people don't realize. That Mars-Neptune moment wasn't a setback. It was the last pulse of the old configuration, the final wave of fog before something underneath it changed. The heaviest point in a stretch usually isn't the middle. It's right before the conditions shift. And that's almost exactly what happened. Because at the same time that Mars and Neptune were doing that, something else moved into place quietly and changed the whole picture. Not gradually, not over the next few days. Specifically this morning, in the early hours before most people were awake, two other planets lined up in a way that cuts directly through everything Saturn and Neptune have been doing. And the reason that matters, the reason this morning is different from any other morning in the last several months, comes down to exactly which planets those were and exactly where they were sitting when it happened, early this morning, before most people were awake. That's when it happened. Venus and Jupiter formed an exact alignment. And the reason that matters isn't just that two planets connected. It's where they were sitting when they did it. Venus is in Taurus right now. Taurus is her home sign, the sign she rules. That means Venus isn't operating at reduced capacity, isn't working through limitations, isn't trying to express something in unfamiliar territory. She's at full strength. Everything she governs, money, material stability, the value you place on things and people, the way resources flow, all of that is running at maximum right now. Jupiter is in Cancer, and Cancer is Jupiter's exaltation, the sign where Jupiter is considered to be at his most powerful. Jupiter expands whatever it touches. In Cancer, it expands what's connected to home, security, family, long-term foundations, the things that are supposed to feel stable. And in exaltation, that expansion isn't vague or scattered. It has weight to it. So what happened this morning is this. The planet of money and value at full power aligned with the planet of expansion and growth, also at full power. A sextile, which is a specific angle that creates an open channel between 2 points. Not a collision, not a tension, a passage. That's actually rare. Not rare like once in a lifetime, but rare like, you can't engineer this. Both planets have to be in exactly these signs at exactly the same time, and the angle between them has to be right. Change one variable and the configuration is different, weaker, less direct. This one landed clean. And here's what that means in practical terms. That Saturn-Neptune fog, the thing that's been blurring results for months, it doesn't disappear. It's still there in the background. But Venus and Jupiter in these positions are stronger than that background noise. They create a window where things that were stuck in the fog can actually push through. Not everything, not automatically, but specifically the things that were ready to move and just couldn't find traction. That window opened this morning, and it stays open for a few more days. Not weeks, not a month, just a few days. After that, the planets move on, the angle closes, and the conditions go back to what they were. This isn't a vague, good energy moment. It's a specific mechanical window where the conditions for movement are better than they've been in a long time. And the gap between now and when it closes is short enough that it's worth paying attention to today. Not next week, not when things feel more ready. The question is just what exactly it opens for, and where in your actual life you're most likely to feel it. Here's the part where I want to be straight with you about what this window actually is. Because the way people usually talk about Venus and Jupiter, luck, windfalls, things falling into your lap, that's not quite right. And if you go into the next few days expecting something to arrive on its own, you'll probably miss what's actually available. This isn't luck. It's a change in conditions. There's a real difference. Luck is random. Conditions are structural. What Venus and Jupiter in these positions do is change the underlying structure. The thing that was blocking movement isn't as strong as it was. The fog is still there, but there's a gap in it. And that gap is real and usable, but only if you move toward it. Think about what's actually been sitting frozen for you the last couple of months, not in a general sense, specifically. There's probably something. A financial situation that's been waiting for the right moment. A conversation you've been putting off because it didn't feel like the timing was right. A decision that's been sitting in the almost but not yet zone for longer than you can easily explain. Maybe something you tried to move forward earlier this year, and it just didn't go anywhere. Not because it was wrong, but because the conditions weren't there yet. Those situations didn't disappear. They're still where you left them. And the thing that was making them hard to move, that specific combination of fog and friction, is temporarily weaker right now than it's been in months. That's what the window is, not a delivery, a passage. And here's the part that's easy to miss. A passage only works if you walk through it. Venus and Jupiter in alignment create the opening. They don't carry you through it. If you wait for something to show up on its own, the window closes in a few days, and the situation stays where it was. But if you take one real step toward the thing that's been waiting, one actual move, not a plan, not an intention, a move, you're working with conditions that genuinely support you right now in a way they haven't for a while. That's also why this morning felt different for some people even before they knew why. Not a breakthrough, not sudden clarity, just a slight loosening of something that had been tight. A situation that felt like a wall yesterday feeling slightly more like a door today. That's not imagination. That's the conditions shifting. The other thing worth knowing is that Saturn and Neptune are still in the background. The fog didn't lift completely, so don't expect crystal clear results immediately. What you're working with is a window that's stronger than the background drag. Not a day where everything is suddenly easy. The difference matters because if you move now and things still feel a little uncertain, that's normal. You're not doing it wrong. You're just working in conditions that are better, not perfect. Better is enough. Better is actually a lot, given what the last couple of months have been. So where does this window hit hardest? And which areas of your life are most directly in its path right now? 3 areas. That's where this lands most directly, and one of them is probably going to feel more personal than the other 2 the moment I name it. The first is money and financial situations. This is the most direct one. Venus in Taurus rules exactly this, not in a vague abundance way, in a very specific, practical way. Money that's owed to you, a financial decision you've been sitting on, a conversation about pay or price or value that you've been avoiding because it never felt like the right moment. If something in your financial picture has been in a holding pattern, not because it's impossible, but because the timing kept feeling off, that holding pattern is looser right now than it's been in months. The window isn't asking you to make a massive financial move. It's asking you to take the one step you already know needs to happen and keep not doing. The second area is agreements and conversations with specific people. Jupiter in Cancer expands what's personal. Not abstract opportunities, but real situations involving real people you already know. A conversation that's been waiting, a follow-up you've been putting off, something between you and another person that's been sitting in that uncomfortable, we haven't talked about it, but we both know it's there space. Jupiter in Cancer in exaltation means that right now, conversations that touch on security, home, family, long-term arrangements, those have more room to move than usual. Not easier exactly, but more room. The kind of room where saying the thing you've been not saying actually has somewhere to land. The third area is personal decisions that have been waiting for better conditions. This is the quietest one, but often the most loaded. There's probably something you've been telling yourself you'll deal with when the time is right, when things settle, when you have more clarity, and months have passed and the time keeps not being right. The window between now and when this closes in a few days, that's as close to right conditions as you're going to get for a while. Not perfect conditions, right ones. And here's the thing about all three of these. They're not separate buckets that don't connect. For a lot of people, they're actually the same situation wearing different faces. The financial thing is connected to a conversation with a specific person. The conversation with that person is connected to a decision you haven't made yet. Pull one thread and the others start to move too. That's how Jupiter and Venus in these signs tend to work. Not one isolated area, but a chain where one real move creates room in the others. The question is just which end of that chain is easiest for you to reach right now. Which one is most ready? Which one has been sitting longest? That's probably the one worth moving toward first, while the window is still open and before the conditions shift back to what they were. So here's what to actually do with this. 3 steps, specific ones. Not a mindset shift, not a journaling prompt. Actual moves that match what the window makes possible. The first one is for today or tomorrow at the latest. Identify one situation. Just one. The one that's been waiting longest. The one that came to mind when you heard the 3 areas. Not a list of everything that stuck. 1. The financial thing, or the conversation, or the decision. Write it down in one sentence if that helps. Not a paragraph, not an explanation. One sentence that names what it is. That's it for step 1. The window doesn't know your situation, but you do. Name it while the conditions are this clear. The second step is for the day after that. Take one real move toward it. Not a plan. Not, I'm going to think more carefully about this. An actual move. Send the message, make the call, open the document, say the thing. Small is fine. Small counts. What matters is that you're moving toward it while the conditions support that movement, not waiting until after the window closes to decide you were ready. Venus and Jupiter created the passage. You have to walk through it. The third step happens in the morning in a couple of days. There's a new moon coming. 27 degrees, 29 minutes Aries, early in the morning. And that new moon lands directly in the same sequence as everything else happening this week. What you moved in the Venus-Jupiter window doesn't just hang in the air. It lands on a new lunar cycle that's opening right behind it. A new moon is a reset point, a new phase. What started moving now has somewhere to go. So the third step is simple. When that morning comes, notice what shifted. Not compared to some big expectation. Compared to where things were a week ago. That's the honest measure. That's where the actual movement shows up. One more thing worth saying before we close this out. The Saturn-Neptune fog is still there. It doesn't disappear after this week. But what changes is your relationship to it. Because you moved something during a window when movement was actually possible. That changes the texture of what comes next. Not dramatically, but enough to feel different from the last couple of months. The drag that's been going on doesn't erase overnight, but you're not in the same position you were in yesterday. Something real opened this morning, and it's been open all day, and it stays open a few more days still. So that's where things stand. The drag that's been going on since February, it's not gone completely, but the conditions underneath it just changed. Something that felt like a wall a week ago might look more like a door right now. That's not nothing. The window stays open a few more days. What you do with that is up to you, but it's worth paying attention to what's suddenly feeling more possible than it did. And this isn't the end of the week either. April 17th brings a new moon that connects directly to all of this. What shifts now has something to land on. Subscribe if you want to stay with this. The next part is already close.